what is the best way to prevent crime as opposed to simply reacting to crime? I have a suggestion, which I believe should be based in community policing, but you all have experience, so I'll ask you all that question. What do you all think is the best? Yes.
I would think it's community involvement. Police can't be everywhere 24 hours, 7 days a week. Without the community, we are no one. So we can all work on one accord. Get back out to neighborhood watches. I remember growing up, you always see a sign say, this neighborhood is under neighborhood watch. We don't see those signs anymore. And if we do incorporate the signs, it needs to be more than just a sign, just an active involvement.
Yeah, I happen to be community policing. You've heard that term used a lot lately. I think that's very important. I've never been a police officer, but I work closely with them every day. I work closely with Green on cases, and the thing I often see, because my grandmother still lives in Yancey, so I'm there every day, and I've said this at several other forums, even the one at Mount Zion where there was, it wasn't set up like this, and I can tell you it was a good before he, some of y'all may have saw it on the news. But sometimes, most of the time I see police officers, they ride by, windows up on a cell phone. The reason I say that's a problem is because if you work a beat, just my opinion, if you work a beat for a year and a half, and you don't know 15 people on your beat, then the people in the neighborhood don't trust you. If you build a rapport with them, they'll trust you. They'll talk to you, they'll provide information. They'll trust you with the information they'll provide. They'll trust you with protecting them, but you have to facilitate. You have to facilitate some type of rapport with the people who are trusting you to serve and protect. And I think some of the older cops that's been around a while, they do that a lot. They were trained that way. I think we got to get back to that training. And of course, that's just from the outside looking in, but I think that's very, very important because that also lends itself to making good cases. Because when something happens in certain neighborhoods, y'all, I'm gonna tell you now, and Jay, the prosecutor, she knows this. That's why she's back there smiling. Yeah, you was a lawyer, you know the cases. You can look and say, you know, the case happened in danger, but guess what? Danny College, the prosecutor, gonna have several witnesses to tell me what happened. But if it happened in certain areas, the no snitch rule kicks in, that guy comes right back to our neighborhood. So, I mean, not only is it the police, but again, it's us in our neighborhoods. We have to police each other too. We have to police the police and police each other. I think that's just the time we're living in, and that's what we have to get back to.
If I may chime in on that, there's several things he pointed out. The no snitch rule does kick in immediately, unless it's your family member or someone you love. You can't have a bias of the situation. It has to be an opportunity where you have to find that common ground where you have to be firm in your decision. It's one of those type of situations where if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, and that's kind of what our neighborhoods have fallen into. It's okay if the dope boy puts money into the collection page at the church, you know, but you know, when things happen in the community, you don't want to say anything to jeopardize that money coming into the church. We get complacent sometimes with some of the things that goes on in our neighborhoods if it's not affecting us directly. And that's one of the biggest issues, is when it doesn't affect us directly that we have a problem. Now, as officers are trained to patrol with the windows down. And the reasons why is because you can't hear anything with the windows up. You can't hear somebody screaming for help. You can't hear somebody trying to flag you down. I literally have seen officers who have gotten waved down because somebody has a flat tire or something, and they keep it moving because they can't hear them. One, because the window's up. Two, is because they don't want to stop and be sitting there waiting for somebody to come and assist the citizen. Citizens assist. That's what you're supposed to be. You're a community servant. Some officers get complacent with the fact that you are. You are a community servant, and you are here to serve the community. So with that being said, they get really, social media is is it has turned into a 50-50 type of situation. You can become addicted to anything. And because people have become so addicted, they don't know how to let go of their electronic devices. I'm pretty sure everybody here has their cell phone. How many actually could have been comfortable enough of leaving their cell phone in the car? How many times have you checked it since you've been here? I know at least twice. Looking for some text message, some alert, some whatever. Since you've been here, we have disconnected ourselves from each other, which is putting a wedge between each other to the point we can't communicate anymore verbally and sit in front of each other to have a decent conversation. So when police come and they're driving down the road, you have to remember they're human. They cannot disconnect either. So they're on their cell phones, they're texting, they're Facebooking, they're Instagramming, selfies. You know, they're doing all these things. And the vehicle, you pay for in our tax money. How do you address the situation? IAD. Anybody familiar with IAD? IAD. IAD is Internal Affairs Department. Internal Affairs Department are the police who police the police. We are not familiar with this because the only time people find out anything about Internal Affairs Department within the community, you also have Alabama Bureau of Investigations, which changed the name to State Department of Investigations. Anybody familiar? I'm gonna give it all to you. State Department of Investigations was originally called Alabama Bureau of Investigations. These departments are the departments that police the police. If a police officer is involved in any type of shooting or any type of crime that may be what Birmingham calls in their red book, conduct on becoming a police officer, which is normally that you violate somebody's civil rights, that's when these entities get involved. Once they get involved, then that's when you're supposed to make sure and be diligent in the fact that they are doing their job. Are these positions elected positions? No, these are police officers who are policing other police officers on a state level and on a local level. Internal affairs, every police department is supposed to have an internal affairs department. That doesn't, Birmingham's is really good, but they're also covered under the merit system. Anybody familiar with the merit system? Yes, ma'am, you have a question?
I just have a question. It's just for the general account, but I'm sure you can certainly answer it. You talked about different mechanisms of reporting, police activity, but, one of the issues that we see nationally is that there's a lack of accountability. Some of the police officers' names who are involved in misconduct, their names are not even released. There seems not to be a database for you to know if police were involved in incidences in the past. So what do you know of any activities here in Birmingham that's happening, helping us to be more transparent about the type of people who are policing our communities?
So you're asking for the background of police officers, police the community, in a sense. One of the number one issues that we're having in society as far as Birmingham is concerned is being able to obtain qualified police officers. And when I say qualified, as far as the physical aspect of the job, the training aspect, but the number one thing that cuts people off from being a police officer is that they can't pass the drug test. And that's something that Birmingham takes seriously. We do not hire any violent felons. Anyone with a violent charge or any type of drug charge will not be hired as a police officer. And so, rest assured, coming from a police officer, that if an officer has been hired with the city of Birmingham, that he has gone a strict background investigation, and that he doesn't have any prior drug charges or violent felons. But you must remember that police officers are human, and a lot of times people want us to go about in society and say, well, I'm a police officer, but I'm from Inslee, but I've never been in a fight. Well, I'm a police officer, I'm from Inslee, and I've never stolen a piece of candy as growing up. You know, we're not machines, we are human. And so I think that that's a lot of times people want us to detach ourselves from the human aspect, but also there is an expectation and an understanding that we are here to serve and protect.
Question. This is kind of geared more towards the mental health aspect of it. Oftentimes, of course, we see what's going on, but the impact on actual families. You know, you see these kids get murdered. The situation where the gentleman was shot with his daughter in the back seat and, you know, fiance on the driver's side. What type of impact from a mental standpoint do they typically have? I mean, I know it's some. I mean, for someone to see someone being shot, or even as a 4-year-old seeing her father murdered in front of her, what type of impact?
So, hi everyone. My name is Nadia Richardson. I'm the founder of No More Martyrs. It's a mental health awareness campaign in the Birmingham area. Our focus is creating a community of support for Black women with mental health concerns, and we've been addressing a lot of these issues through the campaign. It's a national campaign, but we're headquartered here in Birmingham. And so specifically about that, the answer to that question, the quick fast answer is it affects us all, right? So there's no one in this room that I think at any point in time has not become fatigued, angered, saddened, frustrated. It has not been emotionally impacted by what's going on in the news, and you can't avoid it, right? Just like what you were saying before. Even if you don't watch television, if you log onto your computer, it's there. If you step into the coffee room, it's there. If you go to your churches, it's there. So you really can't avoid these conversations. So yes, it impacts us. It impacts us to the point of causing fatigue, heightening our anxiety, heightening our likeliness to develop depression. But the important thing is to make sure that we are caring for ourselves by having conversations about it. Because what you don't want to do is watch the news, become frustrated to the point where you don't know how to manage your feelings, and then going to work every day and not having a safe space where you can express those feelings. So having those conversations like in safe spaces like this, with your family and friends, in your churches, in your communities, in your Greek organizations, is very important, but it's also important to commit to your own form of self-care. And what I mean by that is I regularly turn on the television. I do, because I work at the university level, and I do diversity training, cultural competency training. I'm teaching it every single day. So when I'm going to work and I come home, I just can't do it. I don't want to hear it anymore. And I don't want to, I need a break. So I'll turn on Deforal, I will turn on, whatever kind of rerun makes me feel better. It takes me back to a time when it just seemed different to me. And it's not, I think sometimes we try to make ourselves feel guilty for doing that, or you may even have loved ones who blame you for doing that, right? They'll say, well, you're just not being realistic. You're hiding from the truth, and that's not the case. You're protecting yourself. You're protecting yourself so that you can kind of hone in your energy and commit to contributing to whatever kind of change might be necessary in your community in other ways. You can't do that if you're tapped out. You can't do that if you're experiencing depression and anxiety and just stress to the point where you can't engage with yourself and with others. So it doesn't impact us. It's not just, it doesn't have to hit so close to home where it happens to a loved one. Once you see these stories one too many times, once you start feeling that you can't turn to law enforcement, once you feel like there's no justice to be had, it's impacting how you interact with others, even if you don't recognize them.
How do you engage your children with those conversations, especially young ones?
Just be straightforward. I mean, these kids are exposed to stuff that we've never been exposed to. And we're beyond the part of sugarcoat. Because they can probably tell you some stuff that you didn't know anything about. And when we start getting to a place of trying to sugarcoat and shield, and they're already 12, we're not even being realistic. Because they're already exposed to so much. When you start trying to put that shield there, it's kind of too late. When you're talking about someone in the ages of from an infant to a baby, then that means you need to go ahead and start putting the parental blocks and stuff like that on their cell phones, on the TV, and things of that type of such nature. But you can't be with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you think that you're doing everything in the house right, which you could be, doesn't mean that they're not gonna be exposed once they leave the home. Because everybody's not gonna take those type of precautions. So when you go ahead and if you tell them in advance and start prepping people, then you know that they know already. And it gets to a place of hope, you hoping that they're making the proper decisions once they're away from you.
And I'll say something really quick too, right? Because we can have a professional, what I say a lot of times is I'm very professional, but I'm not so formal, right? So we can have a conversation and not like let it be so formal that we can't be honest about certain things. My daughter just turned 7. I don't typically watch the news. My husband has it on 24 hours a day, right? And she came to the room one morning when my husband and I were getting dressed and, you know, just getting ourselves ready. And she goes, "Mom, I don't like Donald Trump." And I was like, what? You know, like we don't have those kind of conversations around her. And then as somebody who is in cultural competency, if she makes a statement, I need her to think through, and I'm looking for her to equip her to think through why. How did you reason and come up with that on your own? And this is what I mean by saying our children are smarter than we give them credit for, right? She listens to the man, you know, the few little bit of time that she has on, you know, when she's walking in and out of rooms and the news is on, she listens to him, she listens to his tone, she watches his mannerism, and she heard him say that that Pocahontas was stupid. That was what we were, right? So you remember was talking about, yes, right, and called her Pocahontas, and so my daughter's like, what's the matter with Pocahontas? I like Pocahontas, so that's her reasoning, right? So I had a conversation with her about that. But that's just one of many conversations from a 7-year-old. She just turned 7. She's also said, why are people so mean? Why are so many people getting shot? Why? She's asking these questions. So, not to freeze up when they do ask those kind of questions, to have honest conversation with them without instilling fear or anxiety. And what I mean by fear and anxiety is that there's a lot of talk now going on about the conversations we have to have with our kids that other parents don't, right? That parents of color have to have with their kids that other parents don't. But there's also a lot of research that says by educating, which is necessary, your children in this way, that you also, if you don't do it in a particular way, you can also heighten their anxiety to where you're instilling fear. And you don't want to instill fear, right? You want to be mindful of what you're instilling in them, letting them know that yes, history tells us that you will be treated differently because of who you are and what you look like throughout the world. But also kind of letting them know that there are steps that can be taken to alleviate that, right? And that why does that take place? So I talk to her even now about what does bias and prejudice look like from the police officer's side. If the police officer is fearful of somebody who's black, where does that come from? Where does that history come from? Where does that culture come from? Where does that perspective come from? And really, how can we educate law enforcement and other fields to not be so fearful of black skin? It's not too young at 6 and 7 to have those kind of conversations because they're mindful, and if they're not talking to you and asking you those questions, they are asking someone else.
Actually, about what you're talking about, because my daughter is 7, and she makes statements to me like, "I hate police," and it's like, why? Because she watches the news or something like that, which I try to keep off the TV. But how I've tried to get her to go talk to some of the police officers, or we're walking in the mall and something like that, and I see one, you know, I'll go up and start a dialogue with them. But what are other ways to stop children coming to that conclusion? Because that was another thing this year, is she discovered that she was African American and real very light skinned, but she's darker than everybody else in her class. They were not nice to her. So it's multiple things that I'm dealing with. What are some?
I think the number one thing that we can do as parents is stop using police as a disciplinary for our own kids. We have to take responsibility for our own kids' actions. So many times when I was on the streets, I would stop at a convenience store and a kid would be acting up and they would always say, "Stop, I'm going to tell the police on you." And that paints a negative picture that we are the bad guy per se. So to undo her fear The only thing you can do is continue to let her know that we are out here and we care, and the dialogue is great. But once you just let her know that we are on her side, then it should come around and undo what TV has done for her.
Let me tell y'all a story. Actually, I love the police. I'm a little older than everybody else. My son's 21. I told him a story about 4th of July just recently. I went to Shelby County on the trip. I went to have a friend. She had 2 flats on her beam. And she lived in Meadowbrook. So I didn't know what Meadowcroft Road was. So I'm riding around lost. I see a white police sheriff, Shelby County. I chase him down. Now, when I get to him, I ask him a question. He pulls over, he talks to me, get on the computer trying to find out what the road is. It's 5 white women pull around us to surround us. So he gets out the car. Now, I say to myself, I knew I was scared of the police. 5 white women around me. Now, I said, okay, how we handle this? So he gets out the car, and he says, what's wrong? Why are y'all? Well, we thought you needed some help. I'm in my car. He's in his car. All the women get out the car. One got a bat, one got a purse, one got a cell phone, one got the other cell phone. No, I mean, they neighbors. They share the camera. So he said, would y'all please get back in your car and leave? Now, he actually took me to the address. When we got there, he stuck his hand in the car, said, sir, I'm sorry. I know what he said he's sorry for. He said, all of us not like that. So I say this to say this. Most police are good. You got law averages of 1 out of whatever. I think it would help the police see a bad cop before we do. Because y'all work with them every day. Yeah. So, you know, if we got to use the sticks rule, y'all need to use the sticks rule. Y'all can tell on them faster than we can. I know this shit. My dad taught me children. So I got a long story. I know you, Ruby. So, Jaden. So, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's not that many bad cops out there. It's just one can give a whole group a messed up reputation. And then you don't know what to do.
I had a point on thought to get you guys your perspective of earlier you guys talking about how to fix all this. I'm a big fan of moving trading places. It's showing my age, but you know, Eddie Murphy and Dan had party. I think if you put a soccer academy in the middle of Fairfield, in less than a generation, somebody's going to be playing the World Cup. If Google has a mini location in that same place, somebody in that community is going to be the next Steve Jobs. If you put abandoned houses there, if everybody in this room will 27, is over 21. If you don't think you're going to live to be 21, why be anything but crooked? I'd probably do the same way. If I didn't think I was going to live past 21, I'd probably do some things too. So I really think economic development, I know it's not a fast answer, but that is the solution to all of this. You have economic opportunities that you can not just see it, but you can touch it. Because it's one thing to have a president in office, another thing is to actually believe you could become the president. Two different things. And of course, every other career there. You have economic opportunities, then it allows you to live a different kind of life.
Can I say something really quick? I agree with what you're saying. I think one of the things that can make this conversation confusing is that we're trying to address so many things, right? We're talking about, you know, good cops, bad cops. We're talking about disciplining our children. We're talking about, you know, black neighborhoods and impoverished neighborhoods and access to certain things. We're talking about Black Lives Matter. We're talking about all of those things in one conversation, and I don't think that we can do that effectively. I feel like if we're going to talk about even law enforcement, yes, there are good cops, right? But hearing that in the context of Black Lives Matter is like hearing all lives matter. That's not what we're talking about right now. Right now, let's talk about the not so good ones, right? Because sometimes perception can be reality, and the perception right now is that Black people are not going to be treated equitably by the police. Let's talk about that now, and we can talk about how that's historically rooted, because that goes way back, right? That goes way back, and so it's systemically embedded into many of our institutions. It's why there's not that many black doctors. It's why there are not that many black lawyers. It's why there's, the school zones are so jacked. Like, we can really talk about the history of an inequality that kind of allows certain things like this to persist. So yes, there's a lot of things that we could be doing, but if we're not addressing those systems, if we're not addressing the inequality that's so heavily embedded, that allows the bad officers not to be addressed, that allows the bad officers to get off time and time and time and time and time and time again, that it doesn't matter how we raise our kids, they're not gonna be safe. It doesn't matter how we go about our lives, we're not gonna be treated equitably. So I feel like we need to kind of hone in and tailor the conversation in a way where we're addressing a very particular thing. And so I don't know what you want, what that's gonna be for this conversation, if it's law enforcement, or if it's Black Lives Matters, or if it's schools, but if we can kind of tailor the conversation to be very specific, it might be a little bit more beneficial. Because right now, to talk about it this way, I don't think it would be as beneficial.
The way in actuality, it all goes together.
Yeah, it's related.
Because we're talking about how we're gonna raise our children in this type of environment, and what do we need to do, and you're asking what do we do, and we want to know from a professional therapeutic perspective and the legal system. So when we're looking at our judicial system, we want to know, okay, what can we do as a community, as African Americans, in this jurisdiction or in this state, to help with getting our police officers better trained. So now the question is that one, they need more diversity training. That's one thing. Birmingham is one of those cities that have been through diversity issues. This state is not affected, or the southern region is not affected like the northern regions are. They have more killings up north of African Americans than they have down here in the south. Why? Because we've already been through it. We went through it in the 60s, the 50s, the 40s. When they went up north, I literally had someone tell me, a northerner tell me, that we don't have those type of issues. Now this was a number like about 10, 15 years ago, that this young lady tells me that we don't have those racial issues. Y'all need to get over it. Okay. I'm sitting back 15 years later. Now do I tell her to get over it? I can't. Now I have to explain to her what's going on. The other thing is I'm wondering why so many people are shocked that this is even happening.
Because it's been happening.
And why are we so shocked? Because it was a system that was already broken.
It's what it's designed to do.
I'm glad you brought it up. So I got a question for Danny and Ms. Davis. So from a legal standpoint, we see a lot of this stuff going on. And the outrage, a lot of the outrage is the fact that you have officers that, I mean, you're on camera and you just blatantly shooting or killing what we perceive as unarmed or is not a threat, police walk. That creates that mental retaliation. I'm mad, I'm gonna set up 6 cops and I'm just gonna kill them and then kill myself. So from a legality standpoint, my question would be, what's hard, or why are these cops successfully, when it's a blatant murder, you're on trial now for just manslaughter, that you end up walking altogether? And then from a defense standpoint, what is something that defense attorneys can maybe do, or why is it going from an actual murder to a manslaughter to I walk? So.
Let me start, and that's a great question. And I'll say this, number one, this may be minute in some people's mind, but it plays a huge role in everything you just discussed in your question. Oftentimes, we don't participate in the jury system. We don't show up for jury duty. We find reasons not to be there. And you know who determines if that police officer walk or not? A jury. I don't. A jury does. A jury of your peers, 12 people, determine if that officer walks or not. Now, that's if you get to a trial. You know, we've also heard about cases where cases are dismissed at the grand jury level. Where, you know, you have, 28 individuals in a room, and the case is presented by the prosecutor. I mean, here in Jefferson County, for the most part, is our elected DA, that didn't happen here, but I'm saying, he presents the case to the grand jury, most of the cases. That's how the office is set up. But again, if we're not participating, you know, in the system, then we're on the outside, waiting on the news to tell us what the results are. Now, I can tell you from experience doing this for 15 years, oftentimes, when the panel of an hour come over, there's a lot of the other rates. Because there's not many of us that participate. Because maybe we have to work. I mean, there may be legitimate reasons now. I'm not saying that, but maybe you have to work. You know, maybe you don't have anybody to keep the kids. Maybe that's a financial hardship on you. But there are so many levels as to why that happens. Now again, some of that also has to do with, in all honesty, not when it's on video, but if the skill of the attorneys. But if it's on a video, you know, if it's on a video, like the two that I saw more than one time, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. The only excuse is this, is that the people that's making the decision think it's justified for reasons that we know. And I don't have to say it. They think it's justified for reasons that we know. That is a black man sitting in the car, I don't think I shot. Bottom line. And that's just the truth. But we need to participate more in the system as far as coming over for jury duty. We do. It's very important. It is very important. Because half the time the guy on trial lives in our neighborhood. He lives in our neighborhood. But oftentimes, out of 12 people, maybe one of us, 2 of us. That's it. So we need to look at that. I know people talk about vote. Yes, vote is very important. But if you're talking about our judicial system, we need to participate. And that's how you participate. That's your civic duty. And I mean, I remember, you know, blacks couldn't participate in at one time. Women couldn't either. But now that we can, we don't. So to me, that's very important. That's very, very, very important that we look at that and think about that when you get that little summons in the mail. I know you don't be excited when you get it. I'm sure nobody ever does somersaults and all that, but it's important. It's important.
And just to add on him right quick, when voting is important, because the DA's office is an elected official position. So when if you voted for this DA to be in office, and now you're asking this DA, you're not asking the DA, why is he not bringing this officer up on criminal charges? Because if I'm not mistaken, Attorney Carr, can the DA's office pick up any case at any given time if they want to, whether a person wants to prosecute or not?
As long as you prove it.
I would like to piggyback off of Attorney Carr's answer, which pretty much has a lot to do with the jury selection and who hears the case. But as a criminal defense attorney, there are several factors that are considered during a potential trial or during a prosecution. One thing that I like to look at is my client's past. So a lot of times you have a client or defendant that is being tried on trial for murder or manslaughter, things of that nature. But the first thing that a criminal defense attorney would like to do is not have a trial, okay? Because a lot of times with trials, a lot of things come out that doesn't help. So when you look at the client's or the defendant's past, you try to work out deals, plea deals, which includes reducing a charge, which includes not only reducing the charge, but a lesser time being served. But as Attorney Carr said, if there's video, I mean, there's nothing more to be proven. But if we're not here to, if the jury's not there to actually listen to the case, convict the criminals, I mean, we're all limited. So those are the things I would say are considered.
And let me say this too, there's something called jury nullification. You know, and I know some people heard of it. Just because it's there, believe it or not, a jury still can ignore it. They can ignore it. They can nullify it and say, you know what? Yeah. You know, I believe to be on reasonable doubt, but you know what? My vote is not guilty. They can do it, so we have to participate. And, I agree, our local officials, the DA, the judges, the mayor, city councilman. See, I can say that because I'm not running. I'm just here because I feel an obligation to be here. But hold them accountable. I mean, seriously, hold them accountable. Just because they had that position one time don't mean they got to keep it. They're not doing the job. Hold them accountable. That's important. That's very important.
Before we get to you, Tony, she has a comment. And then Tony.
So I do wholeheartedly agree that it takes participation from the grassroots level on the way of jury duty, voting for local elections specifically, as well as talking to your city council people, congressmen, all that good stuff. However, it has to be a gradual process to an end game that goes to the point of these two wonderful women here. What we are experiencing is an awakening of our people to the fact that the system that we have found ourselves in was never created for us to succeed, period, whatsoever. It was built off of the run and sweat of our backs, and it's to the point where the powers that be literally do not see us as human. We were not even human when the Constitution was written, and still to this day, that's how they see us, because it's a mentality that was passed down along with the money that we made them. So we have come to a crossroads where either we're going to perish in the system and go down with it, or we can induce a shift. Birmingham induced a shift 50 years ago. I feel like we have been called to do that again. So that takes economics, as my friend said over here. That takes everyone's separate part, but don't expect an artist to go to a city council meeting on Tuesday at 9 o'clock. It's just not going to happen, but they have their part in the energetic and spiritual part of this movement as well. So I think it has to be a holistic thing. No one is wrong, you know what I'm saying? It takes everybody's different parts, but there's time sequences to it all. And if we think that voting, or number one, if we think that we have any input on who the president is, number one, we're wrong. Like, voting for your local officials, that will get the job done, but we have to think of it as this system was not meant for us, so what can work? How can we play to our strengths? What can we build a foundation upon that is natural for us, and only use money as a tool of an exit strategy and not to perpetuate something that was doomed. Like the cycle of the civilizations, what, 200, 250 years? This is 200 and something, like it's just over. We have to guide the ship, and that's just plain and simple.
Tony, I think you were next.
Well, I do believe in the fact that there is a shift in the atmosphere, and how we look on the other side of this shift is going to be very important, because as Hispanics are moving in, they're dominating more, but the ignorance of our people at this point is ridiculous to me, because I have found lately that we tend to want to discriminate more against some of any and everybody and jump on bandwagons of discrimination at the drop of a dime. One of the biggest issues I had yesterday was an African American woman who owns some boarding houses would not take a client because they were HIV positive. You're African American. You don't want to take a client because they're HIV positive. Why are we so quick to discriminate? Not only just discriminate into that type of, that's just like when Hispanics were coming in. We automatically assumed all of them were coming in from Mexico. All these Mexicans. We forget about Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and all that. Why am I bringing this up? It's because we are not focused on what we need to be focused on. We have lost our way. And our way is so lost to the point that when people try to redirect, we have an issue with it. We have been bred, we have been taught to be successful. But when I ask African-American successful men about donating some of their time to our adolescents and juvenile men to show them that you can be successful as a black man. They don't have the time. But the guy that hangs out on the corner or works 4 or 5 jobs has time to teach football. But at the same time, he's showing our kids maybe how to cut up rocks, cocaine, weigh it up, talk slang. But when our professional black men are asked to do these things, we don't have the time. And it goes back on the woman to do these things. I'm a man, 25. I just thank God that I had a man to step up and be a father and a mentor to my son. I'm just one of the lucky ones. But what about all the women that are not? So when you start talking about our community has to, if you're gonna fix anything, you have to fix within before you can start sprouting without.
Thank you. To the young lady's comment in fact, definitely shouldn't be expecting. But I think you made a very critical point. In order to shift, we have to be in a place to shake something up. And I think, and I will defer to the gentleman here on my left. How do we get African Americans more involved in law enforcement? There's a stigma with being in law enforcement in our community, is my opinion. How do we get people more involved in actually wanting to go into the area of law enforcement and criminal justice? And also, how do we as citizens become more involved in our community so we can partner with the police? Now, every police officer is not going to be, applicable to that, and that's fine, but those people need to be identified. We need to have some mechanism to say who should be policing us. We need to have a relationship with these people and know them more intimately. We can't get people who are reflective of our communities in those positions.
Seems like you are the type of person that definitely needs to go ride along with the police department. So will you be willing to do that first of all?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're gonna get you signed up for a ride along.
Can we volunteer for ride-along?
Absolutely.
Because I would like to help out as well.
Absolutely, and that's what it's gonna take. It's gonna take the community involvement. Get back to young lady behind you. Hey, she brought out a great point, a very great point. But a lot of times people need to realize that being in law enforcement, being an officer is not a job. It should be a calling. It should be something that is almost like ministry, that the Lord tells you to because you are ordained by the powers. Anytime that you are ordained and your society says that you have the right to take someone's life, that's very, very powerful. So we don't want to just get the average person that did not make a high ASVAB test and say, come on to the police department. It's something that you can do. We're trying to weed those type of people out. I've participated in various departments within the police department, but I'm only one person. I can only do so much. So it's a charge on me to be with my colleagues, to go to career fairs, to try to do this, to try to go out and identify qualified people that are mentally sane. Because seeing what I saw several years back on the streets is unbelievable. That's why I invite everyone to come and do a ride along. It's horrendous to be able to. No one calls the police when something is good going on. No one calls the police to say, hey, it's a birthday party, mama turned 65 today, come on over. But you want to call the police when everybody's fighting at mama's birthday party. So every time I would get that call, 329-686, I know something bad has happened. So I have to come in, I have to be a doctor, I have to be a lawyer, I have to be a counselor. So that's where we are working on different mechanisms to make sure that our police officers are better suited mentally to the best of our abilities. You know, any job can drive someone insane. I was a bank teller back in college. And at the end of the day, after seeing so many customers, I was like, my gosh, I don't want to see another quarter. So imagine what I saw and saying, I don't want to see another murder, or I don't want to see another robbery, and things of that nature. So it's just going to definitely take the community involvement. Birmingham, President Obama is working on the initiative to take back the cities. And he knows it starts on a local level. And so Birmingham is one of 6 pilot cities throughout the United States as a model system. And what we're doing is trying to model different police departments on the system that we have implemented and to go forward. We have gone before the president, the chief, and the mayor has, and said this is what we've done. We cannot sweep under the rug our past, but what we can do is control our future. And that's why we have a police chief that works well with the community. Maybe, I think twice a month, he's out in the housing projects. He gets a bus and he loads it up with police officers, and we just walk the housing projects. But we as citizens cannot get caught up in what the media is portraying. That's the number one thing. The media is paid for reviews, for stats, to get everyone to tune in, regardless of if it's true or not. So my challenge to every one of you is to just get the facts. Can one person, and I wasn't going to touch this, but I have to, can one person please explain, when we talked about the young man that was shot in front of his child, can someone tell me what happened? Yes, ma'am.
Was pulled over and he was pulling out his wallet because they needed to see it. And when he reached for the back of his pants, the officer said that he thought he was going for a gun and shot him.
And where did you get this information? Is this from the video?
This is, yes, that I watched the video.
What you saw,
Was it tailored video?
no, what you saw was the aftermath of what happened. We never saw what occurred before then. But it was a very strategic time and a pivoting point, because we have already seen what happened with the other 2 officers. And so that's why it struck a nerve, because we were already in charge. Now, I am not here to defend police. I am here to inform and to educate, to get the facts. I get it double times. I'm a black male, okay? I don't look like this when I'm off work. So I'm a black male at the end of the day, but I'm also a police. So I'm kind of pulled on both sides of the fence, and I understand what's going on. Everybody is scared. Everyone is afraid. People are afraid of police. Police are afraid of people. What are we going to do? And that's the issue here. We know we have an issue, but what can we do? And it's going to take forums and conversations like this, especially from police officers, to get out and to engage the public more often. Because we got to tie this tie back, and we definitely do not want to see what happened 50 years ago in Birmingham to happen again here.
I guess my statement is, well, let me start off with this. My brother is a police officer. He's been a Birmingham police officer for over 15 years. So I might be biased in some things I say. But with everything that's going on around the country, not necessarily here, I don't see us with police brutality issues here. I'm not discounting what happened in Baton Rouge. That was sad. It shouldn't have happened. And they have some police officers that may need to come here and be trained, because I've seen police officers. I have best friends as a sheriff. I have another best friend as a police officer. And I do believe that they're getting the type of training that they need. I think our issue again is with police presence in certain neighborhoods. I grew up in Norwood. I knew all our police officers where I grew up. We had no problem being outside on the sidewalk. We didn't run in the house when we saw the police officers. But now we do not have that type of communication with local police officers. I'm not saying they're bad, because I haven't encountered anybody that was just so rude to me. I haven't had that issue. So I guess my question is, because the issue that we're having
here in our community, and it starts at home, is that we don't respect each other's lives, and we're not even paying attention to the police officers. We don't care. We're just gonna shoot at each other, and we're killing each other. And in the community that I grew up in, and I also come from Powell, we grew up in, we had community involvement where the men were involved and the women were involved with the youth in that area, and I think it needs to tie back in. We have everybody that may work in our community, but not everybody will move to Alabaster, Helena, and all these other places. So I see you from 9 to 5. And then I don't see you in the community after dark because you don't even live near this area, nowhere near this area. So we don't have any connection anymore with police officers. We don't have anybody that lives even in Birmingham, really, that's policing our area. So we come, we police you, we leave, and nobody is trying to help build, you know, the youth. I'm not saying it's not the parents' responsibility, because I have a 12-year-old son, and I stay on my son. I keep him busy, and I know that he's doing it all the time. But you don't have those type of parents that's giving their kids the time that they need. And then you have some sorry parents. And then you have the parents that were thugs, that's telling